Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, and Ricky Smiley are scared of Katt Williams. That's what Samuel L. Jackson reportedly said, and the receipts back it up. It's not because Katt is violent, it's because he tells the truth. He calls out fake friendships, stolen jokes, and power plays in Hollywood that most comedians stay silent about. At the 2017 Def Comedy Jam, Dave Chappelle praised Katt. The room shifted. Steve looked nervous. Cedric co-signed a weak attempt to steal back the spotlight. They couldn't hide it. This wasn't new. Katt once embarrassed Steve Harvey in front of 10,000 people. He accused Cedric of stealing his best joke. He said Ricky Smiley lied about getting a movie role and even humiliated him in Hollywood by forcing him into a dress. Now the pieces are coming together. The tension, the shade, the fear. So what exactly happened between Katt and the comedy elite? And why are they still afraid of him? Let's get into it. In 2017, during the Def Comedy Jam 25th anniversary special, the energy in the room changed with one name, Katt Williams. He wasn't even on stage, but when Dave Chappelle gave him public praise, it hit hard. The audience laughed, clapped, and turned their attention to Katt. That's when Steve Harvey's face dropped. Instead of going with the moment, Steve tried to shift the spotlight back to himself. "I'm nervous as hell right now," he said, interrupting the vibe. Chappelle didn't bite. He kept talking about Katt. Then Steve tried again, this time louder. "When have you ever seen this many heavy hitters in one room?" Still, no one cared. It looked desperate. Cedric the Entertainer sat nearby, laughing nervously. When Steve jumped in for a second time, Cedric backed him up with a weak "yeah," clearly wanting to move the attention off Katt. The audience didn't notice, but people behind the scenes did, and they weren't impressed. According to insiders and reportedly Samuel L. Jackson, that moment exposed a long-running tension. This wasn't about a reunion, it was about control. Who gets the spotlight and who doesn't? And Katt Williams? He didn't need a mic or a stage to steal the room, but that awkward moment in 2017 wasn't the start. It was just the first time the world saw the fear out in the open. Because years earlier, something happened on stage that flipped the balance between Katt Williams and Steve Harvey, and it was brutal. Before the awkward energy at Def Comedy Jam, there was a moment that changed everything. In 2008, Steve Harvey and Katt Williams were booked for the championship of stand-up comedy in Detroit. What wasn't supposed to be a battle turned into one, and Katt made it personal. In front of 10,000 people, Katt didn't just outshine Steve. He humiliated him. He called out Steve's image, joked that his signature high-top fade was fake, and claimed Harvey wore a man's wig to cover up his bald head. Most of the crowd had no idea Steve was actually hairless. His look was part of his brand. Katt tore it down in minutes. Steve's sharp image had earned him respect. That hairline made him a style icon. But once Katt exposed it, the illusion broke. And according to Katt, so did Steve's confidence. He claimed Harvey stopped doing stand-up because he couldn't face the crowd after that night. The fallout was huge. Steve eventually dropped the wig, shaved his head, and shifted fully into TV hosting. On the surface, it looked like a rebrand. But if you believe Katt's version, it was damage control. That moment in Detroit wasn't just a comedy face-off, it was a public dismantling. And for a man like Steve Harvey, who built his career on confidence and stage presence, it left a mark. Years later, when Dave Chappelle mentioned Katt at Def Comedy Jam, and Steve started squirming, that wasn't nerves, that was memory. The man who ended his stand-up career was in the room, and Steve couldn't hide the discomfort. But Steve wasn't the only one watching Katt closely that night. Cedric the Entertainer had his own reasons to feel uneasy. While Steve Harvey struggled to pull the spotlight back at Def Comedy Jam, Cedric the Entertainer sat nearby, laughing nervously. Most people didn't notice. It looked like harmless banter. But behind the scenes, insiders saw something else: discomfort. When Steve tried to interrupt Dave Chappelle, Cedric quickly backed him up with a soft, "yeah," like he couldn't wait to move on from the topic of Katt Williams. He didn't want to be part of the praise. He wanted it over, and now we know why. Katt later revealed there was real tension between him and Cedric, going back to 1998. According to Katt, Cedric stole one of his best jokes. It was Katt's closer, his biggest crowd pleaser on BET's Comic View. The network even used it in their official commercial. Cedric saw Katt perform it live at the Comedy Store. Himaya complimented the set, told Katt how much he loved the joke, then 2 years later used it word for word in the original Kings of Comedy. The only change? Cedric swapped Katt's car for a spaceship. For Katt, it wasn't just theft, it was betrayal. That joke was his signature, and Cedric, already a star, took it and claimed it as his own. Years passed, but Katt never forgot. He called Cedric a walrus with no talent and claimed he couldn't sing, dance, or write his own material. So when the spotlight shifted toward Katt in 2017, Cedric's reaction made sense. He wasn't just uncomfortable, he was exposed. He knew Katt hadn't forgotten, but the joke stealing wasn't the end, because Katt believed that Cedric and Steve were part of something bigger, a pattern of power moves, envy, and silent sabotage. Cat Williams didn't stop with Steve or Cedric. He claimed they weren't just jealous of him, they were part of something much worse. According to Katt, both of them, along with Ricky Smiley, played a role in trying to sabotage another legend, Bernie Mac. To the public, they were all part of the Kings of Comedy family. But behind the scenes, Katt said there was jealousy, backstabbing, and power games. He claimed Steve Harvey hated that Bernie had the acting range studios wanted. While Steve struggled to land roles, Bernie was starring in hit films and carrying his own TV show. The plan, according to Katt, was to make Bernie the opener during the Kings of Comedy tour, and save Steve for last, positioning him as the headliner. But after seeing the footage, producers changed the order. Bernie closed the show because his set was the strongest. That quiet shift exposed who really had the crowd. It didn't stop there. DJ Ed Lover, a close friend of Bernie Mac, backed Katt's story. He said Bernie told him directly that Steve Harvey tried to take his role in Ocean's 11 by calling the studio behind his back. That wasn't just competition, it was sabotage. Katt painted a clear picture. Steve, Cedric, and Ricky formed a tight circle. They supported each other, but anyone outside that circle was fair game. Whether it was joke theft, career blocking, or fake support, Katt believed the pattern was always the same. Bernie, known for staying focused on the work, never publicly fought back. But Katt? He wasn't staying silent, and if his words were true, then the betrayal ran much deeper than anyone thought. And that brings us to Ricky Smiley, the third piece of the puzzle, whose feud with Katt was about more than jokes. It was about ego, control, and a movie role that still sparks controversy. Ricky Smiley wasn't even on stage at the Def Comedy Jam, but Katt Williams still made sure his name got dragged into the spotlight. Their feud started years earlier, and it all centered around one role, Money Mike in Friday After Next. Ricky claimed the role was originally his. He said he was supposed to play Money Mike and that Katt was going to play Santa Claus, but Katt wasn't having it. He fired back, saying that over 200 black comedians auditioned for that role in LA, including Ricky. And if Smiley had already been cast, why was he in that same audition room? Katt didn't stop there. He accused Ricky of being willing to perform a disturbing scene in the original script, one that involved an R-rated bathroom assault. Katt said he put his foot down, told the producers that scene wasn't comedy, and pushed for changes. Ricky, according to Katt, had no problem with it. But the real revenge came later. Katt said he inserted a clause in his contract that he'd never work with Ricky again, unless Smiley wore a dress. Then came First Sunday. Smiley played an elderly woman in a church dress, and just like that, Katt's condition became reality. Whether it was true or not, fans couldn't unsee it. Ricky denied the entire story. He said the director personally asked him to play Bernice Jenkins and that it had nothing to do with Katt. He even praised Katt for making Money Mike iconic, but the damage was done. The public started seeing a pattern. Every time someone crossed Katt, their image took a hit, and Katt knew it. He played by different rules and didn't mind exposing people who thought they were untouchable, and the next person to feel that heat, a comedian who thought he was too big to get caught, until Katt and another veteran exposed him. Katt Williams wasn't the only one calling out Steve Harvey. Veteran comedian Mark Curry stepped in and backed up everything Katt had been saying for years. His claim? Steve didn't just steal jokes, He stole an entire identity. Curry said he was sitting at home when a friend called him up and told him to turn on the TV. What he saw shocked him. Steve Harvey live on stage, telling one of Curry's best Halloween jokes from back in 1999, word for word, the setup, the punchline, the delivery. It was all there. Curry didn't stay quiet. He went on Willie D's podcast and laid it all out. He wasn't after money. What upset him most was that someone like Steve, who already had fame and success, still felt the need to copy his material. And it didn't stop at jokes. Curry said Steve copied his entire show concept. Hanging with Mr. Cooper featured a man leaving his dream job to become a teacher. A few years later, the Steve Harvey show dropped. Same concept, same dynamic, even the same haircut. Curry had the high top fade first. Steve copied it. And if that wasn't enough, Cat Williams publicly co-signed every word. Steve responded by brushing it off, telling Curry to grow up, claiming he hadn't done stand-up in years and didn't know what Curry was talking about. But fans weren't buying it. They lined up Curry's jokes and Steve's performances, and the similarities were impossible to ignore. At this point, it wasn't just a single feud. It looked like a pattern. The same names kept coming up, the same tactics, and the same reaction every time someone refused to stay quiet. Denial, deflection, and a quiet scramble to protect their image. But if Katt was really exposing all of them, how deep did this thing go? By now, the pattern was clear. Katt Williams had named names. He exposed Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, Ricky Smiley, and now Mark Curry had joined in, confirming the same tactics: joke theft, role snatching, and reputation damage. But Katt didn't stop with individual feuds. He said there was a system behind it, a group of comedians who moved like a secret club. According to Katt and others, this wasn't random. It was organized. These men supported each other publicly, while allegedly pushing out anyone who didn't fall in line. Joke theft wasn't about laziness, it was about control. Taking someone's best material meant taking their momentum. Blocking roles meant keeping the spotlight in the same hands. Samuel L. Jackson reportedly called it out. He said these comedians were scared of Katt, not because he was dangerous, but because he couldn't be controlled. He didn't need their approval, he wasn't part of their club, and he had receipts. Katt talked about how the group would call studios, sabotage careers, and manipulate casting decisions to favor each other. If someone got too hot, like Bernie Mac, they found ways to slow him down. If someone stepped out of line, like Curry or Katt, they either got silenced or mocked. But Katt didn't fold. He fought back every time, and the more he talked, the more fans started to notice the patterns. The same group, the same behavior, the same denial. For a long time, these moves happened in the shadows, but Katt brought them to light. He turned private beefs into public conversations, and suddenly, the so-called kings of comedy didn't look so united. So when Katt walked into a room and the energy shifted, it wasn't paranoia, it was guilt and fear, because the truth has a way of making people uncomfortable, especially when you've spent years trying to hide it. Katt Williams isn't feared because he's aggressive. He's feared because he's honest. In an industry built on image, silence, and behind-the-scenes favors, he speaks without filters, and that makes him dangerous. He doesn't belong to a clique. He doesn't play the Hollywood politics game, and he doesn't keep quiet when he sees something shady. Whether it's exposing joke thieves, calling out fake friendships, or challenging gatekeepers who control casting decisions, Katt says it out loud, and every time he does, someone's mask slips. Samuel L. Jackson reportedly saw it for what it was. The laughter at Def Comedy Jam wasn't unity, it was tension. Steve Harvey tried to reclaim the room. Cedric nervously backed him. Ricky Smiley stayed out of sight. They weren't celebrating Katt. They were trying to contain him, but they can't. And that's the real issue. Katt isn't just talented, he's free. He built his name without needing to play dirty, and he's still standing after years of public and private battles. That freedom threatens anyone who's built their legacy on borrowed material or backstage power moves. And maybe that's why Dave Chappelle gave him his flowers. Maybe that's why the crowd cheered, even as the legends on stage squirmed. Because in a room full of heavy hitters, the one man who wasn't invited on stage ended up owning the night. Katt Williams doesn't just crack jokes, he cracks illusions. And in Hollywood, that kind of truth comes with a price. But Katt, he's never been afraid to pay it.